out there, it would be fun like all get out to be there, but what are you going to get when you come? What do you get? What value is it? What value is it to Earthlings to do? And the only values that you can come up with are values that are fictional or take a large swath of imagination. Right now there's about 8 million people on the planet, and we're about to run out of space here, and I can't imagine us going to the moon and finding space for another billion people, or for another 500 million, or for another million people for that matter. Now if we got to Mars and we were able to do something strange and cheap so we could put 1 million people on Mars, that would be amazing if we could do that. But I can't imagine us doing that yet. You've gone up and come back down.
All right, so I'm sitting here talking to my dad about odds and ends and oddities, and I randomly brought up something that I read online about how wood is more rare than gold and diamonds when it comes to the universe. And so my dad started to school me on a few things, and one of the things that caught my interest was something that he researched or came across about certain things that we may be able to barter with other civilizations on, and you know, talk to me about that, Dad.
I can't think of much else. I imagine they have most other chemicals in their ore state or natural state everywhere else. Methane and gases and oxygen and nitrogen, they got that every place. It could be though that oxygen might be something that we could share with aliens from another planet too. Mm-hmm. Oxygen is a corrosive element, and it survives here, and life on Earth depends on oxygen. All the life above and below the sea seems to need oxygen. But oxygen might be something that is kind of rare. But wood is kind of rare because wood is a semi-sturdy, semi-long-lived or long-lasting kind of a construct made from plants. When you grow it, there's wood that's 500 or 1,000 years old that still is sturdy and still is usable. And wood is processed into a whole lot of things on Earth, and those things don't mean much here, but they might mean a lot someplace else.
So you brought up something interesting. You said that Russia actually incorporated wood
in their space shuttle.
So how so? And is wood even capable of surviving the environments of outer space?
They took wood and they put it at they lined the bottom of their space shuttle with wood. The United States used some kind of strange styrofoam material that styrofoam kind of tiles that's lightweight and heat resistant when the space shuttle comes back down to Earth. But when it comes back down, some of those styrofoam piles or styrofoam cubes, they get burnt up. Now the Russians found a cheaper way to solve that problem. They just use wood, and they just expect for the wood to burn up, and it's cheaper to put new wood pieces on the shuttle and let it come back down than it is to develop and build styrofoam custom-made cubes to do the same thing. So the wood it can go from Earth to space without damage, and when it comes from space back down to Earth, while it gets damaged, it's still inexpensive and sturdy till it gets all the way down.
I started looking at wood differently because from a universal standpoint, it's actually something that is a lot more rare than we actually realize. But
as far as we know,
yeah,
we really haven't seen life of any kind from other planets, and it could be they have life that grows completely differently from us. They could have there could be a planet where instead of a carbon-based life form, they could have a life form that's based on some metallic element. So suppose they had an iron-based life form, and in that case, the iron-based life form would be way more stronger and durable than ours, but it'd be way more susceptible to oxygen. Because the iron-based life form would probably think of oxygen as a poison. And so we haven't seen life on other planets yet. So until we see life on other planets, we have no idea what's valuable and what's not.
That's a good point.
First off, and then you got to think of the other thing is the expense of going up and getting it. Just like if an alien had to fly all the way to Earth, they use a lot of expense to get here, and wood would have to be really unusual for them to be able to want to come here and get it and take it back, put it to use.
Yep.
And just like I can't think of hardly anything we can think of that we need that's worth going out to space for. There's some people who think that diamonds exist in other parts of the universe, and pretty much as large rocks or as in some
potentially
other
as
form.
Planets, right?
Yeah. Some people thought that there were some planets that had made out of diamonds.
Yeah.
And if that's the case, that'd be nice, but it wouldn't necessarily be worth us going out and getting it.
True.
So, it might be nice, but
precious metals, for an example, what I guess we use for our electronics and things of that nature. Maybe that makes sense to go out in space and
get them.
Get that, but
some of those strange metals that we use, some of the rare metals that we use here, there might be a planet that has them just laying on the ground.
Right.
But there's just no way to know what's valuable and what's not. As it sits, it costs so much. The travel cost is so high. There's got to be something that be worth a whole bunch of money to be worth the travel cost.
So what are your thoughts about going to Mars and settling on Mars and populating Mars with humans?
I think it's a waste of time economically so far, but scientifically I'm still very interested in it.
Mm-hmm.
There has to be a reason to go to Mars and back that can make money before. So economically it's a waste of time. It might be a waste of time until we face an enemy from another planet, and then that would do it, or until we ruin the Earth, and that would do it. But even then, that still would be that's still more or less a waste of time. As far as exploration of the Earth goes, the economic motivation to explore the Earth has been what drove us so far. The exploration of the New World, from the time of Columbus and till now, has been driven by economics, mainly by sugar, tobacco, farmland, so we could grow food, but really it was really driven by things that were rare or unavailable in the European civilization and cultures. So sugar but tobacco and maybe the drugs like cocaine and like that. Those are things that were just not available in Europe, and they were available here. Cotton is actually one of those things that would fit. In the New World, they grew cotton here. They grew cotton here in the United States, and while cotton was available and grown in Egypt and in India, they couldn't grow cotton in Europe, so they used the farmland from the New World to grow cotton. Coffee is something. Coffee is another thing. Coffee doesn't grow in Europe, but it grows here in the southern parts of the United States, or rather in the tropical parts of the world, and that drove exploration. Of course, diamonds and gold, because they're small and easy to carry, but they were, that's an economic motor to make the trip worth the while.
Right.
And lastly, of course, black people. Black people were the Europeans. The Europeans used black people as an engine for trade for 200-300 years, from 1600s to the 1800s. They went down to Africa and bought black people from African tribes, and then shipped them over here and used them used black people as a labor force, so they could grow something that they could raise, something that they could make money off of. They raised rice and tobacco in the United States using black labor. So they made money off the black people, and they made money off of the rice and tobacco. and cotton later on.
Yeah.
Essentially, when I say that economically, there has to be a reason to go to Mars that can make money for somebody over here. They can make people over here healthier or richer. And so far, I can't think of a reason for that. That's the reason why nobody's going back to the moon. There's nothing on the moon that can make us healthier or richer. Right now, the only possible value of continued moon exploration so far is military, and so the United States and 2 or 3 other countries like to think of the moon as a possible military base for some reason or another. And the only reason they can have is for the moon as a military base is they can set a base up on the moon to attack something over here in the United States.
Or satellites.
Yeah.
Maybe it's easier access to
satellites. Satellites are easier. Satellites, you don't have to go nearly as far to shoot them back down. But that's a military use, and that's not necessarily a economic use, and or a peaceful economic use. If you have a military that's supreme, then you can use that military to threaten the rest of the world, which is what the United States does.
So why not populate the moon? Why not settle on the moon? Why not have, outside of the military aspect of it?
There's no other reason to populate the moon other than military.
Right.
There might be. I read someplace that putting moon dust around or on or mixing it with earth dirt made the plants grow better, but I can't think of a reason. I can't think that's a reason for people to go to the moon. If you spend $1 million to fly up to the moon and you bring back $1,000 worth of moon dust or moon dust fertilizer, then that's not feasible. That's not economically useful.
Right.
So I can't think of a reason. You can find other ways you can fertilize plants or make plants grow bigger or better that cost less money than going to the moon and getting a few scoops of dirt.
I don't know. I always thought it made more sense to go and spend more energy on the moon than to Mars, just as an experiment of living on. Even though the moon isn't necessarily another planet per se, it still is an opportunity to
living off the Earth.
Yeah,
you can find a lot of scientific reasons to do that, but doing that for learning just for general scientific knowledge is it's kind of lower. That's a lower purpose of government. The first purpose of government is a earlier or higher purpose of government is to take care of the people you have here. So if you do everything you can to take care of all the people you have here, and then you have money left over, then you can use that to go shoot at the moon or shoot at Mars. But there's no other. There's going and living out there. It would be fun, like all get out, to be there. But what are you going to get when you come? What do you get? What value is it? What value is it to Earthlings to do? And the only values that you can come up with are values that are fictional or take a large swath of imagination. Right now, there's about 8 million people on the planet, and we're about to run out of space here. And I can't imagine us going to the moon and finding space for another billion people, or for another 500 million, or for another million people, for that matter. Now, if we got to Mars and we were able to do something strange and cheap, so we could put 1 million people on Mars, that would be amazing if we could do that. But I can't imagine us doing that yet. I don't see that in the future of our exploration. And
it would seem to be quite expensive to house people on Mars.
Yeah.
The air is poison. The weather is condition wise, from my understanding, it gets super hot and super cold.
And on Mars, it doesn't get super hot. It just gets cold.
Okay.
They don't have any oxygen. They don't have any free oxygen. They call it the red planet because apparently they think there's a lot of oxygen mixed with iron
in the
dirt.
Yeah.
In the dirt, and so you'd have to find a way to go to Mars and process the dirt to produce just something to live and breathe with, and that's a
expensive feat.
That's an expensive and
and complex process.
Exactly, a very complex process. kind of thing. It's the kind of thing that would require a whole lot of technology
and experimentation.
Yeah, and I can't imagine that. I just can't imagine that being a useful thing for. I can't imagine. I can't imagine that. It's probably more logical to have the planet Earth. It's more logical to arrange for the planet Earth to hold 8 million people, or another 5 or 10, another 2 or 3 billion, and 8 billion people, and hold another 2 or 3 billion, and then do something to control our own population. And I don't know if we'll do that or not. But
from my understanding, the amount of children being born has lessened. I don't know if
that's true.
Continues or if that's true
that's
outside
true.
of the U.S.
China officially controlled theirs. They did it by law, and it semi-worked. It didn't work as well as they wanted. But there's a couple places where they haven't controlled the population, and that's Africa and India. And there might be countries in South America that don't have any population control. So what I've done is I've mentioned 2 or 3 places with no technology or very little technology, and they're still propagating and having a lot of kids.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that there's going to be a worldwide slowdown in population, but it's approaching that now. They think there's a kind of a natural thing. They did an experiment with putting rats in a box, and they put enough food for the rats to live, and the rats population exploded at first, and then when it got to a certain level, the rats stopped reproducing. And so there was what amounted to a static population of rats. And that might be what humans are working toward now. But it didn't sound good when the rats did it, and it wouldn't sound good when we do it.
Well, there you have it, folks. I sit down with my pops, say hi, Dad.
Hi, how you doing?
And say bye.
Bye. See you later. Peace.